Hello there, my friends, and welcome back to our series of reviews, discussions, thoughts, and synopses for Warhammer books. Today, I decided I should finally be brave enough to tackle the very beginning of one of the most epic and lengthy space operas of all time. I am speaking, of course, about the Horus Heresy. And if you watch some of my other videos, you may know that I kinda promised I would, back when I did my overview of the Horus Heresy video. Well, I didn't exactly promise it, but I did say I'd start covering this saga at some point. And the some point is today. So we're obviously gonna start at the beginning with Horus Rising, the very first volume both in the Horus Heresy saga overall, but also in the first Horus Heresy trilogy, as I call it. The trilogy comprising the books Horus Rising, False Gods, and Galaxy in Flames. Now, as a bit of a disclaimer, I realize that a lot of people have been reviewing and sharing thoughts about the Horus Heresy for, well, decades at this time. And a lot of them have done so in a way that's probably more eloquent and flashy than anything I've ever done or might do. Still, these are my thoughts on it, and I'm not claiming to be reinventing the wheel. But it is still a topic that I love talking about with either folks or listeners, who in this case might be of a similar mind. But before we get into crusading, I would like to take a moment and remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, and would like to see more story and narrations of various kinds, including all the old content from my defunct YouTube channel, please consider checking out my Patreon page. A lot of content there already, and all of it is free for the time being, with more brand new stuff coming in the future as well. And if you miss my old lore videos, all 2,000 plus of them, you can find them on my Rumble channel, obviously also free. The links for all these are in the video description here. Thanks a lot, and now back to the Heresy. So, the first Horus Heresy trilogy, published all the way back in 2006. The funny thing is that I only started reading this in around 2008 or 2009, when the saga was already at least 6 or 7 books in. So I had quite a lot to devour from the beginning. But without a doubt, these first 3 books, and obviously the one that we're gonna get into today, Horus Rising, are actually some of the best parts of the entire 60-70 volume saga. Also, fun fact, even though these 3 books are written by 3 different authors, I think that they blend together so well that you'd think not only they were written by just one guy, but also just 3 sections of a bigger book. It is that cohesive and engaging. Not only are they very immersive and draw you into the universe of Warhammer 40k in this case, they also introduce a lot, and I do mean a lot, of vital elements from the entire saga. And I'm not just talking about, fan favorite loyalist badass Captain Garviel Loken. More on him in a moment. I'm also talking about the foundation of what would later very greatly expand in further books. Concerning stuff like Luna Wolf's lore, stuff about the Great Crusade itself, the Remembrancers, many characters of whom will go on to do stuff in many future books. But enough gushing for now, and let's talk a bit about the actual book in the thumbnail, Horus Rising. You probably figured it out by now, especially if you have read these already, that the first Horus Heresy trilogy is a bit difficult to talk about on individual books, because the whole thing is just very well knitted together. Horus Rising introduces the audience to… I bet you're expecting me to say Horus. But before it did that, it introduced us to a lot of other very important things. It drops us right into the middle of the famous Great Crusade, so it might take a little while for you to get adjusted, but adjusted you will get. Now, while Horus is in the title of the book, you don't actually get to see him that much in this book. There are multiple perspectives in this, but the most important ones are those that look at Horus with respect, awe, admiration, and even adoration. And I think it's worth pointing out that in these early Horus Heresy novels, Primarchs aren't exactly the main protagonists, in the way that other main Space Marine characters are. Primarchs in these early books are often seen from a distance, as ideals or avatars or forces of nature, not flesh and blood persons. Charismatic demigods who can almost do nothing wrong. And I think this was definitely a conscious decision by the authors to impress upon the audience that the Primarchs were, in a way, infallible, and definitely larger-than-life entities, and Horus more so than most even. Now, the Primarchs do become regular characters in later books, but in this very early, almost prototype stage of what the Horus Heresy literature would become, they were definitely different. So, what does actually happen in Horus Rising? Well, for one, we do get introduced to our main good guy, Captain Garviel Loken, who quite early in the book is elevated to a position in the Mournival. Now, the Mournival during the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy was basically a council of 4 officers of the Luna Wolves, and later the Sons of Horus Legion, who acted as advisors and sometimes the conscience of the Primarch Horus. I'm only mentioning that so you get an idea how important and prestigious the position was. And through predominantly the eyes of Loken and his friend and fellow officer Tarek Torgadon, we get taken through several campaigns and other events of the book. From the very beginning, a beloved former member of the Mournival and the Legion, Hastur Sejanus, had died, which is why Loken was elevated to that position. We get to see one of the greatest, in my opinion, scenes of horror in the entire saga, as Loken and other Legion officers defeat the rebels in the Whisperhead Mountains on the world of 6319. And it is here that we also get one of the earliest contacts with Chaos, in a very creepy and disturbing experience, as the very first Space Marine gets possessed. But more on that in the synopsis. It is also in the aftermath of this event that we learn, at this point in time, that the Imperium doesn't really acknowledge or is even aware of the threat posed by Chaos. Horus himself has to calm and reassure Loken that these Chaos entities are just another type of Xenos. Admittedly, Horus himself didn't know that much about the Chaos Gods either at the time. During this book, we also get taken to the world of murder, where our heroes fight the dreaded Megarachnids alongside the Blood Angels and the Emperor's Children. Since we didn't really see many other legions as early as this, it is an interesting section to see how other legions fight too. We also get introduced to one of the greatest assholes in the Horus Heresy timeline, Lord Commander Eidolon. Even though I will go into more detail on it in the synopsis, the third part, and maybe the most important part in this book, is the Interrex part, as Horus and his fleet actually negotiate with another advanced human civilization, which interestingly shows that the Great Crusade wasn't always just about slashing and burning its way across the stars. With some groups, they actually negotiated and came to peaceful resolutions. We also can't talk about Horus Rising, in my opinion, without mentioning the Remembrancers, which were basically artists and reporters rolled into one, who traveled with the expeditionary fleets and documented in multiple forms all the exploits of the Imperium and the Crusade. And while there are many important characters in this niche that are introduced in this book, I gotta mention at least Kirill Sinderman, who for a while even acted as a mentor to Loken. Now, as far as the themes in this book goes, I would like to underline at least 3 of them. In Horus Rising, the Imperial Truth is established as an atheistic doctrine promoting science, reason, and human supremacy, while condemning religion as dangerous superstition or worse. Enforced by iterators and remembrancers like Kirill Sinderman, this ideology justifies the Great Crusade's own conquest and re-education of former human worlds, framing the Imperium's mission as just secular enlightenment. However, early compliance actions like the subjugation of 6319, which is the very first world that we see when the story starts, we learn also this early on about how fragile the doctrine was, especially when confronting persistent human tendencies towards faith-based governance. Even more strains are placed upon this ideology when they encounter the Interrects, which is an advanced human society that peacefully coexists with Xenos and actively guards against warp entities that they call Chaos, written with a K. The awareness of the Interrects about Chaos actually exposes the Imperium's naivete, demonstrating how its own forced secularism leaves it blind to existential threats. Another great theme in this book is, being a Space Marine story, is loyalty, brotherhood, and the corruption of that. The Luna Wolves are great examples of deep camaraderie forged through combat, anchored by the aforementioned Mournival. Within this council, Loken serves as the moral counterweight. He was chosen for his integrity and willingness to question, but he ends up grappling with rising doubts about the methods of the Crusade, illustrating the growing tension between personal conscience and collective obedience. Cracks begin to appear in this ironclad loyalty through the spread of secretive warrior lodges and personal ambition among other officers. Although these warrior lodges were intended to foster solidarity, they establish avenues for subversion and external influence. Happy Erebus noises in the background. Also, speaking about Horus, since he had been elevated to Supreme Command previously at the Triumph at Ulanor, Horus struggles with the isolation and the heavy anxiety of proving his worth both to his fellow Primarchs, to the governing body of the Imperium, and even to his own Astartes. Simultaneously, the narrative examines the ethical price of forced unification. Many campaigns just end in brutal subjugation or even extermination when compliance is refused, exposing the moral hypocrisy of using violent means to enforce a doctrine of quote-unquote enlightenment. Ultimately, Horus's elevation thus foreshadowed the corrupting and isolating weight of absolute power, and demonstrates how unchecked authority can erode even the best of leaders. Now, for the second part of this video, we're gonna go over the more detailed plot of this book. And fortunately for this one, I had some help from the good old Lexiconum website, where the plot of this thing is actually detailed in full. Obviously, massive spoilers ahead. This book is actually split into 3 parts, called The Deceived, The Brotherhood in Spiderland, and The Dreadful Sagittary. Part 1 begins among the ongoing Great Crusade, with the Luna Wolves under War Master Horus confronting the planet 6319, which was a human world ruled by a sovereign who claimed the title of Emperor of Mankind. And just as a bit of a segue here, there is a famous opening line in this book that almost perfectly echoes the ending of the whole Horus Heresy saga. This book basically begins with the words, "I was there when Horus slew the Emperor." Diplomatic efforts collapse when Captain Hastur Sejanus, or Sejanus, and his delegation were murdered by the elite guard of this discount emperor. The elite guards known as the Invisibles. Next, 4 companies led by Ezekiel Abaddon, Tariq Torgadon, Horus Aximand, and Garvia Loken, which are the first and main 4 members of the Mournival for a lot of the story, will spearhead the attack, and they achieve victory as Horus personally comes to execute the false emperor. During this period, the Council of Terra instituted Remembrancers, which was a group of historians, poets, artists, and photographers to accompany the expedition fleets and record their achievements. And this marked a shift towards documenting the Imperium's progress for posterity. Among those assigned to the 63rd expedition, which is our main fleet that we join in this story, documentarist Mersadi Oleton develops a rapport with Captain Garvia Loken. Other characters including Ignas Karkasi and Pictmaker Euphrati Keeler also appear, offering civilian perspectives that sometimes clash with the military outlook of the Astartes. Also, iterators like Kirill Sinderman promote the Imperial Truth Doctrine via lectures and personal counsel, reinforcing the secular philosophy that rejects divinity and superstition across conquered planets. In the aftermath of the death of Sejanus, Abaddon, Torgadon, and Aximand invite Loken to join them as the fourth member of the Mournival. Loken privately consults with Sinderman, expressing doubt about the necessity and justice of the war on 6319, concerns that his mentor affirms as essential to the Council's role. Remembrancer Carcassy, while touring the conquered capital, publicly denounces the Imperium's actions as conquest masquerading as enlightenment, predicting the eventual fall of all empires. His words do provoke an assault by the Imperial Army troops who overhear him. Next, the final stage of this campaign will target a pocket of resistance in the Whisperhead Mountains, where Loken volunteers with his 10th Company after the Imperial Army falters. Strange Vox transmissions warning of an entity called Samus precede the assault, which does succeed quickly with Terminator armored forces. However, the aftermath reveals a possession incident involving one Sergeant Xavier Jubal, who is killed by Loken after turning violent. After which, his body mutates into a monstrous warp entity and kills two remembrancers who had slipped away to observe the battle. Loken destroys this entity, who would later become infamous as the very first possessed Chaos Space Marine in the lore. Horus even has to comfort Loken, explaining that Jubal was just possessed by a warp entity that he describes as a Xenos form in a region where the barrier to the Immaterium is thin. The events do plant subtle seeds of ideological tension, challenging the dismissal of supernatural events promoted by the Imperial Truth. The second part of the book shifts focus to a desperate rescue attempt following a distress signal from the Blood Angels Legion on the planet of 14020, grimly renamed Murder. Imperial forces here face the relentless Megarachnid Xenos, an aggressive insectoid race capable of slicing into power armor with their claws. The Emperor's children also arrive under Lord Commander Eidolon, who launches an uncoordinated assault which scatters his men amid electromagnetic storms, leaving Captains Sol Tarvitz and the swordsman Lucius isolated among ground combat against the Megarachnids. Tarvitz, who is also one of the more competent and wholesome Emperor's Children characters, defies orders to prioritize glory and directs his efforts to dismantling the towering trees on which the Megarachnid impaled their victims. It was then revealed that destroying the structures disrupted the storms and restores vital Vox communication, turning the tide for the beleaguered Imperials. During the voyage to Murder aboard the Vengeful Spirit, which is the capital ship of Horus, Loken uncovers a Warrior Lodge medallion among the possessions of the fallen Sergeant Jubal, and learns that his friend and comrade Nero Vipus is also a member. This prompts Horus Aximand to invite him to a clandestine lodge meeting. It is there that Tarek Torgadon defends the lodges as necessary outlets for Astartes fraternity that can transcend rank and fosters Legion unity, although Loken remains troubled by the secrecy surrounding it. After all, if it's a secret, it is up to no good. The period also deepens Loken's observations of the Mournival's dynamics, as the Advisory Council navigates the challenges of multi-legion cooperation and the psychological effects of prior campaigning. The remembrancers attached to the expedition gain prominence during this transit, with Mersadi Oleton urging Loken to sponsor the outspoken poet Ignace Carcassy, whose own verses challenge official narratives. Loken confronts the increasingly erratic imagist Euphrates Keeler, who reveals picked captures of the Whisperheads, clearly depicting a warp entity clad in Astartes armor fragments, and then entrusts Loken with the evidence and vows silence. When the Lunawolves finally arrive, Torgadon's company integrates quickly with the surviving Emperor's children, forging an immediate bond of mutual respect between Torgadon and Sol Tarvitz, while exposing stark contrasts in leadership styles, and particularly disdain for Eidolon's ingratitude and Lucius's arrogance. The campaign's months of attrition culminate with the arrival of Sanguinius himself and the main Blood Angel fleet, enabling Horus to reunite joyfully with his brother, and then make a coordinated push which exterminates the Megarachnids. Part 3 of the book depicts the 63rd Expedition's encounter with the Interrex, which was an advanced human civilization that had integrated Xenos races into its collective, and possessed knowledge of a malevolent force called Chaos, with a K. The Interrex initially contacted the Imperials after the conflict on Murder, revealing that the planet's warning signals had been intended to deter outsiders from, doing anything there. They also greeted the Imperium as a long-lost kin, while exercising caution due to past experiences with threats. Horus pursues extended diplomatic relations with these fellows, putting an emphasis on a peaceful alliance over conquest, despite strong objections from officers like Abaddon and Lord Commander Eidolon. But screw those guys. During these talks, a significant exchange occurred when Loken conversed with an Interrex guard, who was explaining their awareness of chaos as an insidious evil capable of corrupting from within. This was a concept derived from contacts including the Eldar, which contrasted sharply with the Imperium's ignorance of such a threat at the time. The moment briefly fostered mutual understanding, but it would shatter when a theft and an arson occurred at the Interrex's Hall of Devices. This was a secure repository of dangerous Xenos artifacts, leading the Interrex to accuse the Imperium of stealing a semi-sentient blade known as the Anathame. Tensions escalated into open conflict across the streets then, where the forces of the Interrex, including their effective bow weaponry, engaged the Astartes in heavy fighting, despite Horus's own repeated pleas for ceasefire. The battle ended with the Imperials subjugating the Interrex, but Loken regarded the outcome as a tragic and unavoidable misunderstanding, rooted in suspicion and miscommunication. In the aftermath of that, it was revealed that Erebus, yes, that Erebus, chaplain of the Wordbearers, had secretly stolen the Anathame from the Hall of Devices. And this is one of the earliest covert acts of Erebus and, the bad guys, which foreshadows corruption among the Astartes legions. Horus, now reflecting on the campaign's failure, renamed the Luna Wolves into the Sons of Horus, to signify a new phase for his own legion, a change that was broadly accepted among its ranks. And this, my friends, has been what I wanted to tell you today about the very first book in the Horus Heresy saga, Horus Rising, written, because I didn't mention this earlier, by Master Dan Abnett. As always, I welcome your thoughts on it in the comments below. How did you feel when reading the first Horus Heresy trilogy for the first time? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you think it was mediocre? Share your experiences down below. If you enjoyed this, leave a like, share, subscribe for future content. And feel free to make suggestions on what books I could cover next if you want. Or if I should go right away with False Gods, the second volume from this trilogy. Thanks a lot for watching to the end, and until next time, the Emperor protects.